Hello everyone, my name is Paula Ziebarth. Many of you know me as Madam Wingnut. I'm here to talk to you about European starlings and house sparrows. And really, how bad can they be? Both European starlings and house sparrows are non-native invasive species that were introduced by humans to this continent. House sparrows were introduced first, supposedly to help control insect pests and crops. European starlings were introduced a few decades later, with about 60 to 100 birds released into Central Park, New York City, by a group attempting to introduce all birds mentioned in Shakespeare's works. Oh, Mortimer, how you've thrived. The entire North American population descended from these birds, with over 200 million European starlings in North America today. Both species are aggressive nest competitors. Cornering native cavity nesters inside a nest box or natural cavity, they often kill eggs, nestlings, or adults. The European starling. During breeding season, February to June in Ohio, starlings have bright yellow bills and relatively glossy black plumage with a green, blue, purple sheen. They are about the size of a robin. They molt after breeding and develop more spots in their plumage after the molt. Their bills also turn black. This picture was taken the last week of January, and you can see the spotted plumage and black bill on this bird. These birds are omnivores, eating fruit, grubs, and other insects. I also took some photos on the last week of January of some other starlings. This bird is in full winter plumage with a black bill. I cannot tell the sex of it. Here is a female European starling whose bill is just beginning to turn yellow in the center. As the bill transitions, you can tell the sex by the color of the bill as it goes into the face. I know this is a female by the pinkish tinge at the base of her bill. This third picture is a male that has transitioned a little further into the yellow bill color, and you can tell he is a male by the bluish tinge at the base of his bill. So pink for girls and blue for boys, very easy to remember, and these colors maintain themselves during early breeding season. The males will select the nest site, and then the females choose their mate. Resident males start checking out nest sites in late winter. In Ohio, I have observed starlings claiming nest sites late in February. They absolutely love tunnels. I have found them nesting in gutters where compromised gutter guards created a nice tunnel for them. Outdoor grills, propane tank access ports, boat winch housing, bathroom or dryer vents, woodpecker holes in house siding, in the tops of streetlight poles, etc. The male may start the nest, but the couple finishes it together. The nest is bulky and can be comprised of different materials. I usually see thicker grasses or straw and other vegetation added. They will use what is readily available, and sometimes they line the nest with feathers. The cup is toward the back. Eggs are usually light blue to greenish blue and often have speckles on them. They are lighter than robin's eggs, but about the same size. All of the eggs in these photos are European starling eggs from different nests, and you can see the variations in coloring. European starlings have 1 or 2 broods, but they will not lay eggs after the second week of June here in Ohio. Passive management techniques refer to steps you can take to deter European starlings that do not involve changes to their nest or handling the birds themselves. Luckily for people housing eastern bluebirds and smaller cavity nesters, they can easily be excluded from the nest site with a proper entrance. A 1.5 inch to 1 9/16 inch hole will keep them out, but I recommend staying away from oval holes or large slot entrances. Some bluebirds construct tall nests that can become depredated by European starlings. To prevent this, consider putting a 1-inch thick wooden predator guard over the hole to keep them from reaching in. If working with purple martins, starling-resistant entry holes are very effective. The Conley 2 entrance, shown here, does an admirable job keeping most starlings out. Crescent and excluder entrances are also effective. Any housing set out for purple martins in Ohio should have starling-resistant entrances. This picture by David Kinnear shows a pair of European starlings trying to enter this nest box. Not only can they not gain access due to the proper hole size, they also cannot reach in to depredate eggs or nestlings due to the 1-inch thick predator block on this box. I make sure to add one of these whenever I have a bluebird make a tall nest. How bad can they be? East of the Rocky Mountains today, purple martins are said to nest exclusively in well-managed man-made housing, due in large part to the takeover of natural secondary cavities by European starlings and house sparrows. In 2012, I discovered these 2 T14 purple martin rigs that had been taken over by starlings. Starlings were in every single compartment. I offered to help the homeowner to remedy the problem. In May, I began monitoring these 28 nest compartments. I removed 28 eggs the first week, 24 eggs the second week, and 27 eggs the third week. These photos really show you the variation in egg color from light blue to greenish, solid or mottled. The following week, after I had removed 79 eggs for the season, the starlings discontinued laying eggs because it was mid-June. Unfortunately, it was also too late for the purple martins to establish nests this year. We installed starling-resistant entrances on the housing the following year and monitored the colony weekly. Since that time, 289 purple martins have fledged from this colony, and not a single starling. How bad can they be? Each year, starlings cause an estimated $800 million in damage to agricultural crops. During winter months, they congregate in the hundreds or thousands. Fungal spores from starling excrement under large roosts can harbor histoplasmosis, which can cause dangerous respiratory illness in humans. The sheer number of these voracious birds decimates natural food stores during winter months, stripping berries from bushes and trees. During late winter, lack of food available in the wild can cause starvation of our native bluebirds and other wildlife. When the northern flickers try to nest in my backyard, beginning in early March, starlings are right there to take over that nest box, and I can only imagine what they do in the wild with our native woodpeckers and primary cavity nesters. European starlings are on the Global Invasive Species Database's 100 Worst Invasive Species list. This list includes insects, plants, mammals, and viruses. So for them to make the list of 100, that's saying something. On to the house sparrow. Last year I did a presentation entitled, "Don't Pull That House Sparrow Nest." That presentation and other wonderful ones from last year's conference are available to view on the Ohio Bluebird Society website. Being able to identify house sparrows is essential when working with native cavity nesting birds. They are by far the biggest threat to eastern bluebirds and other native cavity nesters that I deal with, and I actively manage them with in-box and repeat bait trapping as needed. These great photos highlight field marks to help you identify female and male house sparrows. While the male is very easy to identify, people often have difficulty with the female identification, and you want to make sure you know what you have if you are trapping birds in repeat bait traps. Here's another great picture of an adult female house sparrow on the right. See if you can remember all those field marks from the previous slide. How does her plumage differ from a house finch? From a song sparrow? The 3 birds in my hand on the left are male house sparrows. The male on the left is a juvenile bird. He still has a mostly yellow bill and just the start of his black bib and black mask around the eye. Next to that mature male on the right, you can see the differences. Young juvenile males are often mistaken for females. House sparrows can claim nest boxes early. I have seen them claim a box as early as January. They really get going by March, and unlike the European starling, they continue to try to nest throughout July. Learn to identify house sparrow nests. They're often referred to as messy. You can see the doming quality of this completed nest here. They use heterogeneous material that usually includes long pieces of grass with seed heads, often feathers, but not always. The second nest is a takeover of a native bird's nest. There's pieces of cellophane, yarn, and cigarette butts are common. Little pieces of fur, feathers, tall grasses. The house sparrow egg color can vary somewhat, from almost pure white to cream to greenish or bluish. The left top egg in the right picture is a good example of this. Mottling is dark, almost black, and can vary as more streaky or speckled. Eggs are about 0.8 of an inch long. A house sparrow can have 4 broods per season, with 1 to 8 eggs in each clutch. Warning that this next slide is a little graphic, but how bad can they be? On the top left is a picture of some nestlings found dead on the ground beneath a box. They've been severely pecked by a house sparrow, and the one on the left appears to have had its neck broken. On the top right, there is a cracked and discarded Carolina wren egg. This is a hallmark of a house sparrow depredation on eggs. You can see the jagged crack mark here. If a house wren, which is a native bird, had depredated the egg, it would have been a pinhole prick on this egg. On the bottom left is a picture of a female bluebird that was cornered inside a nest box and killed by a house sparrow very early in the spring. That picture was taken this time of year in March, when eastern bluebirds begin checking out nest boxes. The bird droppings in this nest box are from a house sparrow. When a house sparrow has claimed a box and is roosting in it, he will often kill investigating birds. I should say he or she. Seed-cracking beak on a house sparrow is also a head-cracking beak. The eastern bluebird bill is designed for eating soft insects and cannot compete in close quarters. On the bottom right, the picture here was taken on a trail where I saw some boxes that were installed back-to-back in poor eastern bluebird habitat, but it was excellent tree swallow habitat. A female house sparrow was incubating eggs in one box, and the male was intercepting and killing tree swallows in the adjacent box. And that is what you see here. There's at least 4 dead ones, and he was trying to kill a 5th. When Darlene Sillick and I walked up on this box, we were able to trap that male and remove him. Passive management techniques that are helpful for house sparrows are listed here. House sparrows love to roost and hide in stiff-needled evergreen trees, so never sight a box near one, unless you're using that box as a trap box. House sparrows are attracted to areas near human structures also, so keep that box away from your house, shed, or barn. I discontinue feeding birds during nest season. No need to invite house sparrows into the area with food if I have an active bluebird nest nearby. Never cluster boxes. The closer boxes are to each other, the more attractive an area is to house sparrows. Deterrents such as monofilament line or sparrow spookers can be somewhat effective in discouraging them also. Monofilament line can be installed as shown here and left on the box throughout the year. Sparrow spookers should only be installed after the bluebird has laid her first egg and must be removed after the young fledge. Otherwise, the house sparrows become accustomed to it and will enter with the spooker on. Plans for both these deterrents can be found on the Ohio Bluebird Society website. If you see moss in a nest, you have a chickadee beginning to nest. Immediately installing a 1 1/8 inch hole reducer on that box will allow the chickadee to nest, but will exclude access by house sparrows. Unfortunately, there is no way to exclude house sparrows from nest boxes used by larger cavity nesters. For both European starlings and house sparrows, active management is definitely best practice. Use the passive measures, but if these non-native competitors enter a box, it is time to actively control them. Active management techniques are listed here. In-box trapping and repeat bait trapping are the most effective control measures you can use. The Van Oort Universal Sparrow Trap is shown here, and it is the best tool for in-box trapping. Trapped birds should be humanely euthanized. Nest and/or egg removal is also an active method used by some, but I highly recommend that you don't remove the entire nest until you can trap the male European starling or house sparrow. If only the eggs are removed, the non-native bird will usually try again in the same box. But if the entire nest is removed, you may end up driving it to take over the nearby nest of another species. Only after the male house sparrow or European starling is trapped and euthanized should you remove the nest. Some people choose to trim wings so they cannot fly back into nest boxes. In all likelihood, these compromised birds will become food for hawks or other wildlife. If you euthanize them humanely and then freeze them, many local wildlife rehabbers appreciate donated birds as food for recovering raptors. Repeat bait traps are effective for both house sparrows and European starlings. Here are two I have that work well. The wire sparrow trap is my favorite. I bait it with white bread for house sparrows and peanut butter for starlings. House sparrows can be trapped throughout the year. European starlings can only be trapped during winter months when temperatures are below freezing, and especially when there is snow cover on the ground. It is important to use traps responsibly. Traps should only be set when you can watch them, in case native birds find their way in. House sparrows and European starlings, kept as live decoys, should be well fed, watered, and kept dry. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me through the Ohio Bluebird Society website. Quality traps are difficult to find in stores, so here are several links where you can purchase them online. The Purple Martin Products link has a lot of products for bluebirds also. They sell the covered patio feeder that is popular today. You will be able to access past presentations on the Ohio Bluebird Society website and download plans for monofilament and sparrow spooker deterrents. Cialis.org is a wealth of information for any question you could possibly have about bluebirds, other cavity nesters, and their enemies. If you are on Facebook, here are several pages I recommend that promote best practices when working with native cavity nesting birds. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you enjoy the other wonderful presentations in this virtual conference and look forward to getting out into the field. It's the beginning of March, and the birds are going to be starting soon if they haven't already. Like I said, house sparrows start early, so now's the time to start checking those boxes if you haven't yet. And this is Madam Wingnut saying thank you for listening, and hopefully see you on the trail.